fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons. Like diamonds, we're back talking about the transition to springtime. What's up, Loogie?
Yep. Yeah, this is, we're getting close to it. Going from winter to spring. The fish are already starting to show signs of moving. And so thought it'd be good, perfect timing to have discussion on how to make that change and really how to know where the fish are going to be and how to catch them, of course.
Yes. So we always like to start off with where to find them, because no matter how many Slam Shadies or Power Prawns you have in your back pocket, no matter how much Dr. Juice you have lathered on those Slam Shadies or said Power Prawns, you ain't going to catch them if you can't find them. But we also will talk about lures and even bait. I mean, bait's starting to show up. I saw Luke Simons, did a video on cast nets. We haven't done one of those in a while. So we'll talk about bait and all kinds of cool stuff today.
Yeah, I had to knock the dust off the cast net to make sure I wasn't sneezing while doing it. But yeah, it was now's the time. Definitely bait's starting to move in. Winter is really when there's the least amount of bait, and now they're just starting to come in, and it should get pretty thick here in a little bit. And but most importantly, the actual predator, we're talking about redfish, sea trout, snook, and flounder in some cases as well. But we're really focused on those first three: redfish, sea trout, and snook have very similar behavior patterns when it comes to winter to spring. And so if you find a spot that has one, in most cases, there'll be others nearby, as long as you're choosing the types of spots that we'll talk about. And then at the end, we can talk about the baits and or lures to use to maximize results.
All right. So 30,000 foot view, what's happening with this transition? Where have they been in the winter in general, and where are they going in the spring?
Yeah, so in general, and we'll talk about really like the slot size fish, right? So anywhere from the fish in like the 15 to 30 inch range, we'll just kind of that's the general average that stay inshore throughout all season. So during the winter, those fish will often push inland. So they'll push into like some creeks, even marinas, man-made canals, like residential canals, really looking for areas with deep water, because their biggest risk is to get stuck in a shallow spot during a cold front. As we saw, if anybody was on the news, it happened in Texas. It even happened in Florida this year, but Texas last year had a significant freeze where it killed thousands, many, many thousands of fish across the entire coastline. Giant trout were dead. And it was just horrible to see. And what happened is that freeze came in, it was so strong that those fish didn't have the time to get into deeper water. Because what happens on those cold fronts, that cold air is impacting the water, obviously, from top down. And so the shallower the water, the colder it's going to be. And conversely, if you have a 20-foot channel, that water on the bottom isn't going to be impacted very much at all by the water on the air. We actually had some members in Texas who were having field days. You're catching a ton of fish right after that cold front, in spite of all those fish that died, because the ones that survived, they were all in the main channels. And so he was targeting those channels and was catching like the most fish of his life, after a significant detriment to that area. So just like anything, right? It's all about kind of putting yourself in the right spot at the right time. So again, winter, they're going to be in those deep spots ideally with some structure. So what I like to find are like marinas that have dock pilings, inland creeks that are at least 5 feet of water, ideally like 10 to 15, where there's, the turns of the creeks is usually nice and deep. Ideally that has some sort of structure on the bottom, because they usually won't just sit in a deep pocket of water just because it's deep. Because if there's no structure, now they're going to be dolphin food. Dolphin are in there, they're feeding. And so you need to find deep water with structure. So that's basically been the theme on winter. And then spring is now when they start to move out of that deep water with structure onto some nearby flats and shallow water that also has structure. So the 30,000 foot view, right? If you only think of one thing, just try to like get on an online map. Like Google's great, of course. Even better, smart fishing spots where you can see like where the oysters are and the grass patterns. But I like to just, if I'm going to a new area that I've never been to before, I like to look, okay, where are some deep pockets of water that also have shallow zones nearby, that both of which that have structure. So like a deep water marina right next to a shallow grass flat. I love fishing those spots. Even though there's a ton of traffic by marinas, most people, myself included, for years, Joe, we both would do this. We would launch we'll just pick a Gasparilla Marina where we used to go all the time. And we would never even consider fishing right nearby because, hey, like the further we go, the more fish we're going to catch. So we would go 10 miles, like burn all
it makes a lot of sense. Then.
Yeah. We would go, as far away as we could. And I think that the further away we got from a popular ramp, the more fish we'd catch. And years later, starting kayak fishing and realized, like, as we were trying to paddle as far as we could, spooking up all these redfish, like right near the marina. And long story short, it's as long as that scenario is at play where there's some deep water with structure, close to some shallow water with structure, during the springtime, the odds of there being some good fish there are very high. So like that is, if there's only one takeaway, like that would be it. And that's the good 30,000 foot view.
Cool. All right. Well, let's maybe dive in a little bit deeper. Let's set up a couple of different areas. Let's just take like the Tampa, St. Pete area where you live. What specific types of areas? You don't have to give away your actual spots. That's for insider members only. But what types of areas are you focusing on here over the next 30 days?
Those exactly what I just talked about, but it's.
I was sleeping through that. So you have to.
Yeah, apparently somebody wasn't paying attention. But as far as big bays like Tampa Bay, Charlotte Harbor, right, even like Indian River, in Texas has a ton of giant bays as well. So in areas like that where there's a big bay system, the winter is when a lot of the good fishing and the best fishing happens further inland. So like Tampa Bay was the example. So I used to live on Davis Island, which is like on the far inside, like inland side of Tampa Bay, and I would just fish there out of convenience almost pretty much all year long. And my best trips were usually during the winter, and then also the fall and spring were pretty good. The summer was my worst. And so then I moved to St. Pete. So now I'm on the other side of Tampa Bay. Now I'm on like right where Tampa Bay meets the Gulf. So my best fishing here has been during the summer. And again, spring and fall has been good too. But like my least productive has been winter here, and my best in Tampa and on the other side of Tampa was the winter. So it's been pretty clear that the fish move in and out. Granted, in the summer there's going to be I will still catch fish around Davis Island area during the summer, and I'm still catching fish here in the winter. It's just a numbers game, right? A lot of the fish will push inland during the winter, and then they start gradually pushing out during the spring. So now's the time where I still like going further inland because in many cases it gets a little bit less traffic compared to here where there's just always a ton of boaters on the water. So lately I've been trying to get away from red tide issues that we've had recently. So lately I've been going further inland, and again, but just targeting those spots that have some shallow water with structure close to deep water with structure. And I'm seeing a noticeable trend on getting more fish shallower than I was even like 2 weeks ago. So it's been pretty clear that these fish are starting to move from that deep water up onto the shallows.
What about time, like time of day or tide?
Yeah, I don't care about tide really much at all. I just need it to be moving. I don't care if it's going in or out. As long as it's moving, it's good. And the time of day is now starting to favor a little bit earlier in the morning. Whereas the wintertime, especially after cold front, many times the best bite was like in the middle of the day, like from 11 to like 3, and like right in the middle of the day. Now I'm starting to see the mornings have a little bit better results because now they're just not quite as cold. Like before in the hard part of winter and the core of it, that morning time, sometimes it's so cold they're not feeding hardly at all. So
how much in the early spring, how much does the 3 B's play a part for you? For the layperson, birds, bait, boils.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a factor. In the spring even more so. So winter, not so much because and especially after cold front, they're just trying to survive.
Right? There's not just much. The bait's not as plentiful, etc.
Yeah, the bait's not as plentiful, but they're like, especially after cold fronts, they're in survival mode, and so they're not going to be feeding very aggressively. But when you find them, there's a bunch of fish, and the reason why you can catch a ton of fish is if you can find them and then present a good lure right in front of their face, or the bait, or if you get a good looking offering right in front of their face, they're going to eat it, and it's just a numbers game. And so spring, they're not going to be quite as condensed, but they're going to be more active. So as far as finding the fish, right? Birds, bait, and boils is look for feeding birds, look for bait fish in the water, and then look for boils, which is a fish spooking off in shallow water. You can see like a little mud plume. So yeah, I mean, those are always year round. That's always something to look for. But spring, I would say more so than anything, because now these fish are on the move, and that usually means that they're going to be holding where there's the most food. So now is definitely a time to keep an eye out for any feeding birds, or any kind of bait fish signs that's near some sort of structure, because odds are there's going to be some predators nearby that's following them.
Yeah. Why do you hate live bait so much after all it's done for you? Come on. I mean,
It's just awesome, man. Like, it's been painful. Remember that we were trying to do like live bait lessons, and then we did some, but there was many situations where I had was hammering just giant trout. And I guess this was last spring, or 2 springs ago, before that veteran died. I was on this amazing trout bite, and I got these big trout. They're hungry. They've been eating jerk baits and even topwater, even these paddle tails on camera. Right, this is the area that we're literally one day I caught over. It was over 6 trout over 20 inches on one of our little on our little Slam Shady 2.0.
Yep.
With the camera 10 inches in front of it. And if you haven't seen that footage, check it. It's like Google search.
It's nuts.
What do we call that? Like trout striking lure underwater or something?
Yeah, underwater. Yeah, crazy strikes. Yeah.
So I was wrecking, long story short, I was wrecking fish. It was just some of the best trout fish I've ever had. And so, okay, we got to do some live bait tips. We haven't done, members were requesting live bait tips. And so we go to the spot, and while going up to the zone that was best, we were just throwing lures, because we're just moving fast, and we caught a bunch of fish. Like, we were hammering them. And then we get to the best spot and start soaking live baits, and we were like hardly caught anything. We struggled, and finally we caught like one.
Yeah. It was
and they were like, oh, this isn't working. And so then on the way out, we fished our way out, and now we started catching fish again. So spring, in my opinion, especially for somebody new to lures who are interested in getting into it, spring and fall are the best 2 times for lures, because the fish are going to be happy. They're going to be on the move, and they're going to be a little bit more spread out. And so when using lures, that's a huge advantage. If the fish are spread out, the fact that you can fish so much faster compared to live bait, you can just cover more ground, and you're going to get your offering in front of way more fish. Obviously, if you saw 10 fish in a certain spot, and you had a white bait, a live white bait, or a live shrimp in one hand and a topwater plug in the other, you're crazy for not throwing. You'd be better off with throwing live bait right in the middle of all the fish. But if you don't know exactly where those fish are, like most weekend warriors, you're better off with lures, as long as you have some good lures and are efficient and effective and actually presenting them properly. So the reason why, long story short, the reason why I don't like live bait so much is although I wish I could say I fish all the time. A lot of people are like, oh man, you must fish 4 or 5 days a week. And most cases I'm fishing 2 days a week. And so I don't know exactly where the fish are. And so my best odds, after years of trial and error, I just know that my best odds of having some good fish catching action is to take lures only and just to cover ground. I just get on a map, even when traveling to new spots, get on smart fishing spots, look to see where the oysters are, look to see where the grass is, let's see the wind's doing, and factor in the recent trends, and then pick 5-6 spots and then just go out and fish it. And it's rare that I can fish for more than 3 hours at a time. So it just makes sense for that scenario that lures is just going to win, because now I don't have to even spend a second of time either buying or catching live bait. I don't have to slow down to keep the live bait and alive, or it's just so much easier. And so and now when I used to be live bait only, so it's weird for me to even say this, but now when I try to go back to live bait like that one day, I struggle, because it really is 2 different animals. I've just found just way more enjoyment out of the lure side, especially for catch and release fishing, right? And like trout, snook, redfish, flounder, they're all actually really aggressive fish. And it's just a matter of just trying to figure out, okay, like what depth are they in? First of all, where are they? And then at what depth are they feeding? And then, okay, like what's a lure that covers that depth efficiently? And if those can be those checks can be made, you're going to have a field day, even on short trips.
Yep. I mean, we touched on it with the three Bs, but the birds are one of the easier ones because that, especially in the morning, their birds are feeding. More usually morning and the evenings, birds are feeding just like a lot of animals. And you go out there and just scan the horizon. I used to take binoculars. Remember, in some new areas, I'd literally take. Got them right over here, just to prove it. Yeah,
Take the spy on the neighbors got binoculars there, right?
What's that?
Those are the ones for the spy on the neighbors, right there.
Oh, of course. Well, I have them on my desk. Yeah, but I also have a pair for the buck for birds. Those are my bird hunting ones. And but it's crazy. You find some birds, not the ones that are not pelicans that are sitting there, pooping, but birds that are out actively feeding and diving. I mean, that's just like, hello, there's bait. They're not just sitting there diving because they're taking baths. I mean, they're out there feeding. So I would start in areas like that if you're in, especially a new body water, or if you haven't fished in a while. I do that here. I'm staring out at a lake, not my neighbor's open window. And even when I'm on the lake, do the same thing because I don't bass fish all the time. When I do, especially if it's in the morning or the evening, I got the kids on a pretty good bass bite, and it was right at sunset. And all of a sudden, I saw all these little white birds are just diving like crazy. And it's like, well, kids, we were in the pontoon boat. We had no trolling motor. We had no power pole. We literally just drifted through where these birds are diving and through paddle tails, and we caught bass. It's such an easier way to do it than just hoping and praying that your last spot is going to work for you. And that's why we talk so much about the 90-10 zone. I mean, it is the number one rule for our fishing club. And if you don't know what that means, if you're new to this 90-10, because not everyone knows about that. To us, it seems intuitive now because we've said it so many times, but it's that 90% of the feeding fish can be found in 10% of any area at any given time. And so that means if you're looking, let's just say, Luke, you mentioned Google Maps or Smart Fishing Spots, which is our private software. If you're looking at any body of water, big or small, you can almost guarantee that 90% of that area is not going to be good. That's cool. Like, to me, that's actually awesome because now I can start eliminating areas I know fish aren't going to be at so that I can find areas that fish will be holding. Versus the other way around could get a little bit overwhelming sometimes. Like, oh man, there's just so much water to cover. Sometimes it's easier just to start eliminating the bad areas where you just absolutely know, all right, I know there's not going to be fish here at this time of day, at this depth, etc. And then start focusing one by one by eliminating areas on this 90-10 zone. And we teach all this in the club and have a ton of lessons on it. And to me, that was probably one of the most helpful things to find the feeding fish is that 90-10 rule. And we even have I think it's saltstrong.com/90-10 or something. We'll put a link to the show notes. We put up together even a little freebie if you haven't joined the club. If you're a member, it's already in your account. But if you wanted to see a little bit more, it's 10 to 12 minute video, and we did one for each state. Really, really neat. And actually, we got to update that for spring, don't we? Because we did.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely will. Yeah, it's again, it's not quite there yet. We're still, because there's still some fronts moving through. They're just getting less extreme, and so those fish are just starting to slowly filter out. So I mean, really, within the next few weeks, we'll be updating that for the spring recipe. And again, we'll do it state by state to be able to show some actual like real life examples of what types of spots to look for when you're looking at the online maps. Because the beauty of this is with today's technology, it's not like the old days where the only way to learn was to go out on the water and spend a bunch of hours. Now, like with these satellite maps that we have now, it's just insane, especially with like the oyster layers and seagrass layers that can be added onto it, and even the bottom contour marine charts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of cheating, to be honest. But if for people like to maximize their time, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that 4K satellite view, and some areas it is crazy what you can see.
I think what I'd like to emphasize a little bit more, because I just wish this was something that somebody told me years ago, is if you're just slightly interested in lures, like I was a bass fisherman for many years, I was good at it. Where I literally went like every day, so I best have been good at it. But it was all lures. That's all I used. And I was good at it. I was catching a bunch of bass consistently. And when I switched to inshore and started learning it, like all the lessons and stuff, like all the fishing shows, they were always using live bait. And so I just like I just thought that I have to have live bait. So I started learning how to throw big cast nets. I literally, when I was like 16 and weighed like 110 pounds, I was a real skinny dude. I had a 12-foot cast net, and I was like probably messed up my back because I was lugging that thing around. And yeah, I was catching them. We wouldn't even fish till we had a ton of bait. Like, we'd spend an hour sometimes catching bait. And in reality, we just didn't know where the fish were. So we had some days that we crushed it because we just happened to be in a good spot, but it just slowed us down. And I didn't start, using lures until I had to. And I moved to Melbourne on the Indian River, which I've never fished before in my life. And I only had a kayak. I didn't have the luxury of Dad's boat anymore. And so I couldn't take live bait. And so I just started using my favorite bass lures. In that case, it was just a Zoom Super Fluke on an unweighted hook. And over time, I realized I was catching more and bigger fish per trip than I ever had before with live bait. And that was after, like, I would say 3 months of just using lures compared to like 6 years of hardcore catching bait every single trip and putting all this time and energy and keeping the bait alive and all that. And so if you're somewhat interested in using lures, spring is one of the better times to force yourself. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. You leave the live beta behind and just take lures and follow this 90-10 recipe that we've been talking about. You're gonna find yourself catching way more quality fish per hour than you ever have before. There's gonna be less time dealing with catfish and all the junk stuff. The beauty of lures is most catfish, I catch catfish every once in a while, but in most cases, when it's a thump, it's either a snook or a redfish or a trout or a flounder. And obviously Jackson ladyfish come into play too, but
are rare with lures. So all that lure talk, what are you using in spring? I know in general, we've got this whole match the hatch where, in winter you might go a little bit smaller, compared to a fall when there's big mullet runs and stuff. Are you using a certain size? Are you in a certain depth? Are you using the power prawn on a jig head? Are you using the weighted weedless hook? What are you using?
Well, so in spring, I would say I like to simplify things. I'm the type that I have like one small tackle bag, and most of it is camera gear, and so I have like probably 10 lures that I use throughout the whole year, and each season I use like 3 or 4 of them. But in the spring, what I like are smaller paddle tails, so I would say 4 inches or less. And I especially like rigged on weighted hooks because a lot of these fish are coming up shallow and they're happy. Like this is the time to catch big fish in shallow water. They're coming from the deep. There's a lot of food up on the shallows. And so small paddle tails like this, particularly rigged on a weighted hook, now you can cast these things a mile. This is the Moonwalker. This is the new Moonwalker. It's the widest and densest paddle tail, along with the skin that has a golf ball texture, so it absolutely launches. So this is just a great way to cover a bunch of water quickly while being effective on getting strikes. So I basically use this lure now. If I see a bunch of bait fish, which is mostly the case in the spring, this is the only paddle tail that I even take and use. And if I'm fishing 2.5 feet of water or less, I rig it on the weighted hook. And then if it's deeper water, I just rig it on a jig head. Same soft plastic, just a jig head. But if I'm seeing shrimp, I'm not seeing bait fish, and I see there's a lot of birds. You say that a lot of times, especially at low tide, there'll be a lot of egrets and stuff on the flat. That usually means there's a lot of crustaceans and just smaller stuff that the birds are digging in the ground for. And when the water's higher, those redfish are in those exact same spots, eating that same food. And so if I'm seeing a lot of birds without the bait fish, that's when I'll move over to a shrimp profile. And this Power Prawn USA Junior has been my favorite. Actually, for the shallows, I like the bigger one for the spring because I can just cast it further. I can cover more ground. And again, same thing. I'll rig it on a weighted hook for the shallows. And if I'm fishing, if like a late cold front comes through and pushes the fish into deeper water, I'll just rig the same thing on a jig head. So long story short, and as you'll see in my videos, like my tackle bag is going to be these two for most of the fishing. So if you're if you're a little bit newer to fishing, this is basically all you really need. And for fun, for thrills, I'll also have topwater because topwater is just flat out fun. In most cases, the subsurface will outfish the topwaters, but in the right conditions, when the fish are really fired up, topwater plugs can be awesome. And this is we call it the Moonwalker. It's just a good walk the dog motion. But But yeah, so if I'm really going for hey, I've got to catch some good fish today, it's these two lures, subsurface. But if I am going out for fun, I'll usually start with the top water until the bite starts dying off, and then I'll switch to the subsurface. But like this will basically be all I'll be using for the next couple months, to be honest.
Sweet.
What I found again after years of testing out, it's like I'm embarrassed on how much money I spent on tackle over the years. It's more of it. The fish catching results is mostly based on the spot that was chosen.
Yeah.
Were you in the right spot at the right time? I've done a lot of lure tests with color experiments, and where I do three casts, and three cast change, and do it for for multiple days in a row. And I haven't yet seen a case where like even like a gold spoon versus a white spoon, where like pretty different colors, one top water plug versus another top water plug. I haven't yet seen any situation where one of the options catches fish while the other one doesn't. There's certainly some that'll catch more than others, and it changes based on conditions. But a second lesson I've learned over the years is that I put way too much emphasis on like I would always be wasting time changing colors or lures instead of just changing spots.
Yep.
So
that's good.
Those are two big things that I just wish somebody would have kind of knocked me over the head with sooner.
Well, if you want to get knocked over the head with a lot of lures, go to fishstrong.com. That is our tackle store where you can get everything Luke just showed, the Slam Shitty Mulligan, Power Prawn, Slam Shitty 2.0. I got to throw that one in there. That's one of my staples. And the Moonwalker. And Insider members save 20% on all of that tackle there. What more reason to join the club?
But again, the biggest reason for the club, obviously tackle discounts is great. The biggest reason is just for the latest trends. I'll say the third lesson that I learned the hard way is that I'm just analytical, and I used to print out a tide chart, like the actual tide chart graph before every trip. And with a pen, I would note I would note the time of the tide cycle that I caught every fish. I would note the species, and I would log where it was, and I would put it in a file. And so then if I knew I was going to go on a trip in February, I would pull up my February reports from the prior Februaries and look at them and like, okay, like I need to be at this spot during this tide cycle. But just every year is so different, right? I mean, as far as when the fronts come through and when they don't. And what I eventually realized is that year-over-year analysis is kind of cool and a little bit helpful, but it's nothing compared to what happened like yesterday or the day before, or even like the last 7 days. So if you don't have a support system where you can get real-time information on, hey, here's exactly what trends are happening, where you need to find, those deep pockets close to shallow water, or if they're all way up on the flats and you just need to find some oyster bars or mangrove points or whatever. That's the most important stuff, and that's really the biggest value of the club, is because we do that on a weekly basis, really multiple times a week. You'll see real time reports, regardless of where you are in the Southeast. You'll see real time reports of areas that like you're fishing, and just know where to go. And like Joe said, right away the most important thing, which you can just push away that 90% of the dead zone and just focus your time in the actual strike zones in that 90-10 spot. So, yep. So again, that's all like, just don't spend a lot of time on year-over-year analysis like I did. Long story short.
Amen. Cool. Anything else for springtime? Kind of covered I
think that covers it. If you are going to use live bait, so I know there's a lot of people still love live bait, and more power to you. If you are going to use live bait, there's definitely starting to have some white bait showing up. They're on the small side, so if you're going to be throwing nets, which is the easiest way to catch them, no need to spend money buying bait. I'd recommend getting, if you don't yet have one, get a net with a 1/4-inch mesh size. That way, you're just not going to kill as many baits. I didn't even realize they even made mesh at a 1/4-inch. That the most common is 3/8. That's what's going to be like at the Walmarts, and like most stores have 3/8, and it's pretty good for all purpose. But for the springtime in particular, it's a huge hassle, because if you just cast over a school of bait that's just big enough to kind of poke in there, but they get their gill stuck, first of all, you kill a ton of fish, which isn't cool. Yeah. But secondly, now you got a bunch of fish stuck in your net that you actually have to pull out one at a time.
Massive cleanup on aisle 7. Yeah,
it's a huge hassle. So make sure to find a 1/4-inch cast net. Your local dealer should hopefully have some, and if they don't, we have some in our shop now as well. So that's just again, another lesson learned the hard way after many times of plucking out a bunch of fish from a net.
Yep. And there is a little bit of shipping on that. We did get a pretty good deal with UPS to ship cast nets, which, I mean, as you know, they're pretty heavy, but we will have them in the store as well. So, and including this hat. This is a hat I've been wearing. If you can't see me, I'm wearing kind of what would you call it, like a black and light gray camo hat.
Yep.
The blacked out salt strong. The thing looks awesome. But we're going to have a lot of new stuff there in the store and in Winter Haven, physical store that should be opening. I'm guessing May, when it's all said and done. And then obviously we'll put it on fishstrong.com, which is our normal site. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Hope this was helpful. Ask any questions down below. We always put this in a blog format as well. It's obviously on YouTube and then everywhere that podcasts are in the virtual world of ours. And let us know any other tips, tactics, questions that you have. And once again, if you're an insider member, of course, you get to see all the best spots. I think we have whatever 60,000 different spots and spot dissections and on the water reports. It is just nuts with more going up every single 5 minutes now. There seems to be some new report or something going up. So make sure to head over there and check out the main map. I talk to members a lot of times that don't even know we have that main map. So if you're in the community, you just click map, right, Luke? There's 2 different places to do it.
We just updated the dashboard.
So much stuff in there.
Yeah, we updated the new dashboard where it almost looks like the home screen of your phone, and the map is the second option. So at the top line, it's called the spots map, and you can see every spot that is in the system, and it's a lot, as you'll see. Yeah. The cool thing though is you can whittle it down to see, okay, I want to see the spots near me that were posted in July, right? So from the last 7 years, all the July posts or January posts or whatever month you want to choose. That's cool again, but I like the recency stuff. So you can also see the last 7 days or even last 30 days where you can say, okay, what has been happening near me lately? Yep. And both of which are really awesome. And they're both there right there on that one map. Pretty cool.
Yep. Cool. All right, guys. Well, hope you enjoyed that one. Hope you're able to get up there and do a little fishing this spring, early, mid, or late. And there could be another little small front depending on where you live. Here in Florida, at least the day we're recording this, it's hot. I mean, it's mid 80s hot, which is crazy. But it'll be super hot again before you know it. So enjoy it, and we appreciate you guys big time. Luke, thanks, dude.
Yep.
'Cause fishing, it's in